thank you all for attending. And a little reminder that this Memorial Day, we have a Memorial Day event that we're honoring all the fallen officers and firefighters starting on Friday down Washington Street all the way from 7th Street to about 9th Avenue. We're going to have banners of all the different pictures of the fallen officers, and there's a website that you can look up, and they have their little bio on there. So we encourage families to come on out and learn about those heroes that we have in the city of Phoenix. Also, we'll have that Heroes Lane down in front of Cesar Chavez Park from 35th Avenue to 51st Avenue, and the celebration will be on Friday, May 22nd. With that, I'd just like to welcome everyone and call this meeting to order. Approval of the minutes.
I would move approval of the April 8th minutes.
14?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? It passes. We have call to the public. Mrs. Rogers.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's better or not, considering who's here. I've been concerned about the proposed ballot issue, as you know, and I have several reasons that I would like to bring to your attention and to the public. I have been given two reports on the transportation proposal, one requested with the full statement of members that served on that subcommittee, and one sent to me courtesy of the manager's office, not requested. Neither one gives full information on this. We have no figures on total staff needed for both PFD and PPD and current staffing. Therefore, we don't know the number or the percentage that each department is short and needs to fulfill. Also, that would enter into this is retirements that are going to happen between now and the effective date of this proposal if it passes. Time frame for accomplishment of number one, not stated. When do you expect to complete this? I saw your video yesterday, which had more information than these two things do. Mixing PPD and PFD with transportation, which carts people, it doesn't protect and save them, is a cheap shot politically on a ballot proposal, unaffordable for this city, this state, at $32 billion. This is a middle-class, lower middle-class city and state with a high percentage, higher than national average percentage, of people who are considered by federal government financial standards poor or in poverty. This is not a center of wealth. Mixing these together is incompatible, and it needs to be defeated and put the police and fire back on a ballot with streets at the appropriate funding and all facts available to the citizens in 2016.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Ask these questions.
And
We
those-
don't have them, and I bet you don't either.
Milton, can we follow through with those questions? The answers
you.
for those? Thank you. Alrighty, that's all the cards that we have for the call to the public. We're going to items number 4 through 6.
If there's no questions, I'd move approval.
Any questions? We have a second.
Second.
Alrighty, we have a motion and a second for items 4 through 6. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Items pass. We're on item number 7. I do have some questions on that. I'm not sure if anybody else does. All right, I'd like to ask some questions to staff on
Oh,
item number 7. I know that we classify veterans, do we, versus disabled veterans, or is it just veterans in general?
The city's current system only tracks veteran status, but with the new release of PeopleSoft, we will be able to track disabled status.
Oh, perfect. And it appears that we're doing a good job in hiring veterans, but then the other thing that we need to look into in the future is maybe the middle management and upper management positions also. So that was just the questions that I had. Thank you. I'm not sure if you all have any other questions.
I don't.
Could we also get some information about what the Chamber of Commerce veteran group is doing? Maybe working together with our business community to make sure we're doing a good job for our veterans?
Did you understand the question? Okay, can you ask that question one more time?
I think the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce is also working on hiring a veteran, and some of our business community is very supportive of that. And it would be great if we can work together with the business community to make sure that we take good care of our veterans and take advantage of all that they have to offer when they come to Arizona.
Perfect. We'd be happy to do so.
So basically,
Wonderful.
prepare a report on how we're recruiting veterans, and how we're looking at upper and middle management and recruitments of veterans also. That'd be great. Thank you. With that, is there a motion to approve item number 7?
It's for information.
All informational. All righty. Any other, from items 7 through 10, any other information that y'all need?
I have a question, Mr. Chair, on item 8 on the bicycle registration program. I didn't know we even had this until I read this report. So how do we publicize this? How do we get neighborhoods involved and encourage people to do this?
Good morning. I'm Assistant Chief Dave Harvey. I'm sitting in for Chief Yonner. He's back in Washington, D.C. this week, and he's putting Detective John Hobbs' name on the wall for Police Week.
Oh, wow.
So I just have this on the agenda. Commander Jeff Alexander and Sergeant Jared Lowe put together this program in the downtown precinct, and it is exactly what you said, a great thing and program that we're doing for the community at no charge. And I'll let Commander Alexander and Sergeant Lowe address any questions that you have and kind of give you a little bit more than what's just in the document for what the program is all about and when it started.
I guess, is this citywide or is it just confined to the downtown area?
Yes, ma'am, it is citywide. The program started in 2014, in September of 2014. Sergeant Lowe and Sergeant Bakorski, who worked in the downtown precinct, saw a need for some kind of registration program for bicycles as the downtown community, obviously with ASU and U of A and everybody that commutes into the downtown area utilizing bikes, we were having significant theft of bikes, and that's a citywide issue. Approximately 3,000 bikes are stolen in the city every year, and only about 8% of those are recovered. The city auctions off about 1,000 of those bikes every year because we can't find the legitimate owner of it to return it to. And there is a need to have some kind of program out there to identify an owner with a bike. We have a lot of suspects that utilize bikes in the downtown area to commit crimes. We stop those individuals, and it's a great tool for us to put a suspect with a bicycle if we can do that. Sergeant Lowe and Sergeant Bakorski generated funding through the Downtown Phoenix Partnership and a cooperation to get tamper-proof stickers, and started an events throughout the downtown community where they would register bicycles at community events, neighborhood association meetings, and whatnot. They built it out to enable us to input that information into the computer system so that every officer in the city of Phoenix can run a bike that has one of those tamper-proof stickers on it, see a picture of the bike that was taken at the event, obtain information that was garnered at the event through an affidavit with the bicycle information, the owner information, so that if that owner is not on that bicycle, we can return it to him. And if it is proven to be a stolen bicycle, we now have probable cause to arrest that person. So it's a great tool for us. We expanded it from the downtown precinct to all of the precincts. Every community action officer in the city has been trained on the program, and we have encouraged them to start utilizing the program in their neighborhoods and the communities through whatever meetings or association groups that they want to utilize to have larger registration programs in each individual precinct. So the program is up and running. Every precinct, as I said, has that tool and can start registering bicycles on their own.
Okay, so we can put the word out to all the neighborhoods to, contact the precinct and get training, is
Sure,
that,
do you want to-
or?
Yes, ma'am.
Schedule
Yeah,
event.
we actually just is very successful. The problem is it was so successful when it was citywide. We just ran out. I gave out the last of our tamper-proof stickers. So we're currently working with the Police Foundation to get funding. We're looking at some corporate sponsorships and things like that. So by June, I'm hoping we'll have more of the stickers. We should have enough. I gave out the last ones we had. So, but yeah, we're contacting the community action officers. They can do it at a precinct, or we've done events. Like Commander said, we've done local businesses. We've done at restaurants, other events, community events, anything we can to get the word out. So
You know, every year, I think it's Streets has a bicycle where they give out it's a rodeo or training. Are you teaming up with them? So, I mean, it seems like a perfect
yes, ma'am.
opportunity.
Next year we are, ma'am. They didn't tell us. By the time we found out about it, I didn't have enough of the cost for the tamper-proof stickers were up there. So I didn't have enough for that event. But by next year we will have it, and we'll be out there with them. We've talked about partnering with them and everything.
Very good, thank you. Thank you for doing it.
And the question I have is, do we still do the edging on the bikes?
We don't. We no longer do the etching. This program has kind of taken over that. The tamper-proof stickers work much better than the etching does. Etching is easy to remove off a bicycle and paint over, where the tamper-proof sticker is. It's like a sticker that goes on your license plate.
Right.
So if you try to peel it off, it just tears, and it won't come off very easily at all.
The other question is, if we wanted to fund this throughout all of our precincts, could you bring us back a cost to it? So I think it's a great program. It's something that we can really promote throughout our district offices, and I think that every bike should have that sticker on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Kate?
We got a request from the downtown community if we could do a little bit more work with putting out bicycles and then monitoring them in case of theft, like a dummy bicycle. And then we could let the public know that there could be monitored bicycles and that people should beware before steering a bicycle because the police department could be watching.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Councilwoman Gallego, we do currently have a bait bike in the precinct that we utilize on occasion, quite often actually, to put out in the downtown community that if somebody should steal that bike, we have GPS and the bike will no longer be able to work, and we can make that arrest. We deploy that quite often. We could do some better notification to the community that we do that program currently.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? With that, thank you so much. Thank you. I also want to recognize the former council member, Tom Simplot, that's back there. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
You've got great pictures.
And then we also have Mr. Tripkin. Craig, how you doing? So I think we got a quorum with all the ex-council members. With that, is there any other questions on items 4 through 10
I did have a question on the Block Watch program.
already?
Just wanted to make sure if solar lights were available for the grant. The report really on LED.
They're coming right up.
morning, Stacy Osborne here to answer council members'
Wonderful.
questions.
And I should provide a little context. I represent some areas, including along South Mountain, where putting in conduit for LED wires is expensive in the mountain, and solar is a really cost-effective solution.
And the answer, Councilwoman Gallego, the answer is absolutely yes. That's the wave of the future for the neighborhood block watch grants, is to move towards more energy efficient lighting.
Wonderful. So any type of energy efficient lighting.
Absolutely.
Fabulous news. Thank you for your work on this.
Sure.
Any other questions? With that, we'll go on to item number 11. That's phasing out the overflow shelter and the plans that we have for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. We're pleased to be here today to provide you with information on the closure of the men's overflow shelter and the partnership with multiple partners here at the table on the improvement of the outcomes at the Human Services campus as well as surrounding the campus. I have joining me today Mo Gallegos, Human Services Director, Jeff Alexander from the Phoenix Police Department, Amy Swabenlender, who is with Valley of the Sun United Way, Mike Traylor with the State Department of Housing, Bruce Liggett with Maricopa County Human Services Department, and Assistant Chief Markley also with the Police Department. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gallegos.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, thank you so much. We want to update you on the status of how 5 community partners have come together to address a backlog of nearly 500 individuals who've been sleeping in the men's overflow shelter in the adjacent east parking lot with no services or really exit strategy. Spurred on by the urgency to close the men's overflow shelter due to unsafe structural issues, we began working many, many months ago to address the situation. We realized almost immediately that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is only the beginning. We're here to talk to you about the plan and how we're going to move forward. The issue is multifaceted, very complex, a lot of funding issues, and everything else that goes with it. We're literally building the plane as we're flying it, implementing strategies as we're creating new ones. Before you, in paper and also on the screen, I just wanted to show you an aerial of the areas we're going to be talking about as we move through the presentation to give you an idea geographically. The green area is the men's overflow shelter building owned by Maricopa County. The east lot is the adjacent parking lot next to it. Directly across the street to the south, and all the red area is the entire Human Services campus. The yellow area is the largest single shelter in Arizona, Cash Shelter. I've also labeled the Lodestar Day Resource Center and St. Vincent de Paul buildings, as well as an arrow pointing to a open area between them, because I'll be talking about that, and they're there before you. In the short run, and you have attached to your report is the plan, if you will. I want to tell you straight up front that it has not been easy to put this down in writing because we've been building as we're moving along. So while we've been able to really put it together comprehensively now, that is one of the things that has been very concerning to the community as ourselves as well. So we're now here to begin. So we began working on the step-down process of closing the men's overflow shelter, starting with the 250 that we had there, stepping it down to 220 to 200, and so on and so forth over many, many months. We finally got to March the 31st when we did in fact close that building. We've been doing that, trying to keep housing as the #1 strategy, if at all possible. That is our goal. We're here to house people, to end homelessness, not to just manage it. We are engaging people better than we've ever been doing before. Through funding with United Way, we were able to start assessing and gathering information about everyone that was in the parking lot, which we never had before, and now we're able to make better data-driven decisions. We want to minimize the impact to the neighborhood to whatever degree possible, but with our partners with the police department, we do know that we are going to have some issues as we move through time. We're ready to address them. As far as the indoor overnight shelter, what we are doing now, effective May 15th, is we are going to transition everybody that has been sleeping in the parking lot on asphalt. We are going to move them under roof, if you will, utilizing the LDRC building and St. Vincent de Paul. They will house shelter approximately 260 individuals a night. And then anything beyond that, we will put in the grassy area in between the two buildings. There are plans to put a shade structure over them in just a few weeks. The community outreach and engagement is going on almost every single day. Last Friday, 2 of the partners met with individuals that have been in the parking lot in the MOS to talk to them about what's coming and some of the ideas that they have. Last night, I was at Burton Bar Library with the police department, with Parks and Recreation Department, and meeting with community members, as well as another staff member was at a different meeting last night as well.
So what I'm hearing is 260 plus. What would be the total that we could house?
We're averaging right now about 380 people in the east lot. Those are the averages for this month, the month of May. So that total would be around 400. It fluctuates from a low of about 340 to a high of a little over 400.
And this will be at the LDRC?
Yes, the
Okay.
Lodestar Day Resource Center and St. Vincent de Paul,
Okay.
and the area in between.
Thank you.
Okay, and we've also been working on the coordinated entry and assessment. We know that the whole region has been working heavily to improve all of this, and we want to be in concert with that to whatever degree possible, although we know we have urgency, certainly. For midterm, this is a very exciting area. We have a lot of resources that we've been able to garner by moving some of our funding as well as new funding. In rapid rehousing, we have been able to house approximately 100 individuals so far by redirecting City of Phoenix HUD dollars as well as case management and a contract that the county and the Department of Economic Security put together. Community Bridges was awarded that contract. They were able to house approximately 48 so far. We also have been successful in going before the industrial development boards of both the City of Phoenix and Maricopa County. They've awarded $1 million each, coupled with $500,000 from the United Way, and we now have an additional $2.5 million to put towards rapid rehousing. In permanent supportive housing.
Well,
yes.
when you talk about rapid rehousing, what does that mean?
What that means is there's approximately 60% nationally and locally, approximately 60% of people that are facing homelessness have a need to get into a place, need to stabilize their rent, get their rent going, get income going, whether it's disability or earned income. And so with just some months of help with their rent, they're able to stabilize and keep their housing up. That's what rapid rehousing is.
Do you have contracts with apartments, housing? What type of housing units are available to use for this purpose?
The housing units are all across the city and the valley. They could be just about anywhere. They're not in one particular location. It is scattered sites model. So we have contractors that work with different landlords. They know where the housing stock is, and they also seek it out. And so that's how we find the housing, and that's how we get connected with those landlords.
Do you bring us back data telling us how long they stayed, if they were successful in stabilizing, or if they returned to the street?
Yes. Yes, we are going to be having reports by each strategy and by each fund source to look at how people got housed, where they got housed, and how long they stayed housed. Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Williams, the 46 individuals that we housed last fall through rapid rehousing are still housed today.
Good.
That's the ultimate goal of the program.
It is.
What was the total?
Of the 48, yeah, we housed 48.
46.
of the-
46, okay.
We housed
I heard
100% of the
I
people.
heard 4 to 6, I was like, okay.
100% of the people that we housed last fall, which is 46, are still housed
Okay,
today.
that's what I
And
heard
we have
4
other
to 6. I'm like,
successes
okay.
beyond that show that the systems, processes, and procedures that we put into place today keeps people in housing.
That's good to hear.
Because it's not just about putting a house over somebody's head, it's about offering them the services and the case management and the help with employment that keeps them housed.
And the counseling or the coaching.
Yes.
Now,
Thank you.
do you have, when the assessment's being done, do you rate them in some way according to their need?
Yes, that is exactly what the assessment tool does. It's a tool that goes through a process of evaluating their homelessness, the duration, and it applies a score to them. And so those scores determine the strategy that we should try to employ with them. And while it's not a perfect system, it's very accurate. And that's what we're utilizing. It's called the SPDAT score. I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but Amy might. Yes, that is the tool
remember
that
that
we're using.
term,
And we're
yes.
using that regionally. Everyone's using that same tool.
And I know that they're coming from this particular site, but I also know you were using it with families, homeless families in other
correct.
areas. So I was just curious on if there's sufficient housing and programming and services to support all of these people.
Yes. Yes, and that brings us to the permanent supportive housing. We want to thank the council, the mayor, for your support. You approved and passed us able to prioritize 275 of our housing choice vouchers to chronically homeless, but you also made it very clear that we have to have the supportive services that are needed so people can be successful in their housing. I'm glad to report to you that we've been able to do that. Immediately following the allocation by the City of Phoenix, the United Way put $250,000 forward so that we could begin that process. They have now contracted with Circle the City, who is partnering with the LDRC to start dealing with the most medically needy. We have also developed and are about to put into place a very important collaboration and partnership with Mercy Maricopa Integrated Care. They are the behavioral health system for the state of Arizona. They have funding for medical funding and navigation services that they are going to put to this effort. The United Way is putting the rest of the funding that is needed, that's non-medical, for deposits for utilities and furniture as we move people in. So we are going to be able to utilize the vouchers. We have all the supportive services to wrap around the vouchers. So we have those in place. We also are monitoring all of these projects, as I indicated, and thank you, Councilman Williams, for that question, as we move through time. More long-term, again, we've only begun, and so while I'm impressed, I hope you are, with everything we've been able to do, it's only the beginning. So we have a lot of work to do. We are communicating. We meet every single Monday, and then on Thursdays, we meet with police and streets and public works on everything that we're doing and making sure we're all up to date. Without this collective impact, we cannot continue to have this kind of good thing happen, and we need to continue doing that. We are standardizing all of our interventions to keep up with the continuum of care standards of excellence. That's common definitions, common service criteria, common performance measures. All of that will help us make sure that we are reducing the length of stay that people have in all of our systems, and we will be able to turn the beds over faster, thereby not creating a backlog or a buildup. We're using data to drive all the decisions that we can, and when we don't have the data, we're going out and gathering it, and that has helped us immensely in all of these decisions. So in summary, and as the sign says, a parking lot is not a home, we have in fact closed the men's overflow shelter successfully on March 31st. We are moving, transitioning the people that are in the parking lot to under roof and in a better outdoor area into a more coordinated and serviced, enriched environment. We have professional staff on site. We will have still off-duty police officers, at least for the first 30 days, to see how things are going from a security perspective. We have expanded the coordinated entry and assessment. We now have those resources that I just talked to you about. They add up to over 620 individuals that we can house through all those interventions. And then, of course, we continue to develop the long-term solutions. So I'd like to end the presentation with this. This particular thought came from a 62-year-old individual that has been homeless for 15 years. In the last 2 years, he was in and out of the men's overflow shelter and CAS. He is one of the 46 that Mike described. He was rapidly rehoused back in November. He is still housed. He has medical needs that he couldn't address while he was homeless, and that's why the comment, he thought he was going to die. He now sees his doctor regularly, receives necessary medications consistently, and his oxygen, which he needs, is being delivered to where he is living. He has Social Security disability income. The total quote that he had was, "I'm very grateful to be housed. I love where I live. I could not take care of my medical needs staying in the MOS. I thought I was going to die, and now I have hope." So that concludes the presentation. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Thank you, Mo. And I'd like to thank United Way, the Maricopa County, the City of Phoenix, the state, and the Arizona Department of Housing for all their efforts. But my concern is this, is that ever since the Super Bowl, we've been receiving all kinds of calls from neighborhoods saying that we have homeless individuals camping out in empty lots in our neighborhoods, in our alleys, in our parks. Last night, we just had a meeting with the individuals living around Margaret Hans Park. So it's a growing concern. And this all happened with the closing of the overflow shelter. And it seems like people are being forced out of the downtown area into neighborhoods. The other thing is when you drive home, I drive home from work, go down 7th Street, right there behind the Circle K on Buckeye and 7th Street, there's a camp there. There's about 10 little, they made up cardboard houses there. And then I go down the freeway, get off on 19th Avenue. There's a private lot about 2 acres and it's fenced, but individuals have cut through the fence and they have a couple campsites there. Down the rivers, Rio Salado, you see tents going up. So I think it's a growing problem, and the problem is happening within our neighborhoods also. So how are we addressing those issues?
Outreach teams.
Yes, so yes, we know that that's the case. We're being called and we're going out and all of those. One of the things we are doing is we are coordinating all of the outreach teams across the region. We're going to be working with police department to get them working together, if you were, partnering, going out together. The thing about it is that some of these individuals do not know everything that's happening. Some people don't know that you can still come into the parking lot before maybe they were barred from being there. Some of them don't know that there's housing resources now. There's other issues as well that we need to address. So this is part of what I said. This is not easy. It's rather messy, if you will, in terms of everything that we've got to address. But we now have more housing that we can use than ever before.
I would also add, Chairman Nowakowski, if there are situations, if people are viewing today and there are situations where you are seeing homeless camps, if you contact the Human Services Department, that is the point of contact where we coordinate the outreach teams with the police department to get them out there to engage the homeless individuals to come into shelter.
Councilman Nowakowski, I think the evidence that you're seeing of homelessness around the city is just telling us how significant the problem is. If you look at the numbers between the MOS and the parking lot, they really haven't gone down. So it's really a misnomer that people are fleeing from the parking lot and going out into the neighborhoods. We have a significant issue across this country with homelessness, and I'm very proud to be a part of this team because I think, especially in Maricopa County and the city of Phoenix, we're making more progress than most cities in this country at ending homelessness. And it starts with finding people homes. So as I said 5 years ago, if we have 8,000 homeless people in Maricopa County, we need 8,000 houses. We're getting there. The shelters are all full. So one of the things that we're grappling with is how do we deal with capacity in the shelters in order to provide people places to go. And that's part of the ongoing work that Mo spoke of, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of things that we are continuing to work on, and we're committed to getting our city, our county, and our state to a position where we functionally end homelessness, which means that there will always be housing and services available for those that need them. But we've got a lot of grass to mow between here and there.
The other thing is, are we collaborating with other cities? Because it seems like we're doing a great job. I mean, the CAST Center what a great facility. It really trains people. They have dentist services, they have medical service, they feed individuals. But it seems like we're taking on a lot more than our share. So how do we make sure that other cities, or how can we actually start that conversation with our colleagues from other cities to make sure that they help us with this situation and this issue? Because it seems like we're getting all the homeless individuals from the state of Arizona kind of being dropped off at Cass. And it's a great program, don't get me wrong, very supportive. But at the same time, I think it needs to go beyond the city of Phoenix. We need to start having this conversation and holding other cities accountable also. And how are we doing that?
Couldn't agree with you more, and I commend again the city of Phoenix because you are a leader in ending homelessness in this state. I was just at a project in Mesa yesterday called La Mesita. It's 120 units of supportive housing and low-income rental housing, homeless shelter that'll serve up to 16 families at a time. It has a financial opportunity center and all the components that people who are trying to work their way out of poverty and homelessness need. So there are cities that are doing a good job, but I certainly couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things we've talked about is, as a group, maybe approaching the different city councils around the county and talking to them about the issue and helping them understand what they can do to be part of the solution. I think what Valley of the Sun United Way has been doing with their Project Connects, which are all over the valley, and every time, we go to Glendale or another city with a Project Connect, usually the mayor and the vice mayor of the city are there, and they see firsthand the issues in their city. These people are from their city. They're not from the city of Phoenix. So it emphasizes the issue of homelessness in their community, and we continue to engage with them how their communities can help be part of the solution.
Councilmember Pastor.
The sevens, I'm seeing more and more on the sevens. And I mean, it's everywhere, but it's more, I don't know what the term is or the word. There are more concentrated on the sevens and in the core, in the Midtown area that I am viewing. And it's happening. I see it a lot in the morning and in the afternoon because I'm traveling the sevens. I know that I call Deanna every time. I have her on speed dial and say, can we get a rapid response out here because, someone's in need or can we guide them to where there's some shelter. I did on Mother's Day, on Mother's Day did witness a young girl, and it looked like she was probably 16, 17. I'm assuming she was coming from Central, and there's a big assumption because she was walking towards 7th Avenue, but she was burnt. I mean, the weather now is hot. The sun's going to kill us, and it looked like she had been out. And then on 7th, I was at the corner, and my kids actually were the ones that noticed it and said, "Mom, I think she's homeless." And I said, "Huh?" And I was like, "Oh." And then at that moment, she pulled out her sign and everything, and of course, me, who I am, I was like, "Do you need money? What do you need?" And so I tried to engage her. At times, I don't know, just because who I am, want to engage, and I don't know sometimes if it's appropriate. So I have to watch that fine line, so I called Deanna. But what seems to be happening is on Camelback, on the light rail, and it's all around the light rail, because you're able to get on and get off and travel. There's just a high concentration, and if I would be there, getting on the light rail, cooling myself off, and moving through transportation. So my other issue is safety on the platform and how that operates, and making sure everybody's safe. And if there are rapid response teams on the platform for those that need help or need assistance.
So, Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor, there's a couple things that we're looking at because of all of the calls. There are some service facilities along 7th Avenue. So many times when you're seeing people specifically along 7th Avenue, they may be coming from services they're receiving. So one of the things we're doing with Human Services with our homeless coordinator is reaching out to those service providers and making sure we're sitting down, meeting with them, talking about how they're leaving the facilities, where they're coming and going from. So we make sure that it's because they're receiving services, not they're just walking the streets, and we need to engage them. So we're going to do a better job of that. We are and have been partnering with police for some time on the light rail because in the previous days, we did have some issues with homeless individuals on the light rail. We've sat down, met with our providers. We use a new ticket system so that we can identify people that are given bus passes and so on and so forth, so that we know who's on those if we need to reach out to the providers as well.
And my understanding is also we do have to do several touches. So not to be, for me, fairness, to be very clear that we have to do several touches or several times to reach out and say, okay, you know, what is going on today? Would you like to come with me? Here's some services, whatever the issue is.
That is why we prefer they contact Human Services. We get the outreach teams out there. They specialize in this. We have different outreach teams that specialize in different populations. And so it does take several engagements with them to build that trust and rapport to get them to come into the shelter. So we don't want to mislead that an outreach team is going to go out there and they're going to come in at that exact moment.
And my is more not just male. I've been seeing families and I've been seeing more women, which is probably common, but it's just not just the men's shelter. And I just want to be, it's bigger than and just closing the men's shelter.
I'd like to respond with Maricopa County. And first of all, your comments about a regional issue, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors absolutely sees this as a regional issue that we all need to work on. And our county manager, Tom Manos, is committed, and I'm really appreciative of the partnership the county has with the city and the state and United Way. So this coming together is really kind of landmark. I think it's partially important to remember that even when we had the overflow shelter or the parking lot, they weren't open all day. People left at 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning and couldn't go back until the evening. So people were out during the day. I believe as we enhance the engagement and provide real services to these people on the campus, that some people we've talked to when we've met with homeless people have said they were fearful of the parking lot. They didn't feel safe. I believe as they start to realize there's services available, they see us making housing placements, we're going to draw people in who are fearful of the area around 12th Avenue. And it's going to be a different kind of place because we're going to engage people with professionals. So I think we'll see some impact on that.
And I do want to thank our officers who I know are heavily engaged in wanting to provide protection and safety. But in particular, I read the article last night about, is it DiCarlo? I think that's the last name. Yes, and read the article. And so I'm very thankful to, many of you do it, but he happened to be highlighted. And so it was good to get the story out. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of subcommittee, the police department, in case you don't know, we have a dedicated resource. It's police resources dedicated to the homeless shelter in 8 officers and 1 sergeant that work strictly in that immediate area to deal with the homeless shelter itself as well as the surrounding community and the homelessness that takes place in that area. We're in an interim period of time here between the close down of the MOS and the East lot and the step up of the housing piece. And so I think a little bit of patience is due. Certainly the police department has been patient in dealing with the community and the homeless issues that are in the community. We're certainly very well aware of that. It has increased since the MOS has closed down. I'm confident that if the collaborative that has been put together is successful, the homeless issue in the city of Phoenix should go down significantly. The outreach teams that are available to the police department to utilize that are being put in place are significant. And the police department, there's really limited options on what we can do with the homeless population when we come upon them. We can arrest them, we can tell them to move on, or we can give them a place to go or have people that they can talk to get them housed. The last course is really the course that we need to take. So with the outreach teams in place, the transit issue, Councilwoman Pasteur, that you mentioned, that is a problem. I also have transit under my chain of command, and we send teams out regularly along the whole alignment to do special programs on the platforms. Unfortunately, homelessness is not a crime, so we can't always do something with that population. That's why I say the outreach teams are huge for us, and the effort that they're going to put forth at the homeless shelter itself so that the police department now can tell the homeless people where they can go to get connected to care. Whereas right now we're in a standstill. The shelter is full. The east lot is full, the MOS is closed down. There is no real connection to care. At this point, my hope is that come May 15th, there will be, and then we can start utilizing that resource more heavily than we are currently. We're in a standstill pattern. I mean, we see the camps. I would rather have a camp in an area that is not doing harm to a neighborhood than push that camp out of that area and into the neighborhood at this point. So that's kind of what we're doing. That's the strategy. May 15th, that strategy will change, and I think everybody at the table here really believes that it will be successful, and that's certainly my hope.
So I commend everybody for all their service and coming up with a solution, or at least trying to come up with a solution. At the end of the day, is we need more housing and we need more services, which means we need more dollars or more private-public partnerships if we can, and since that's the way we're moving towards the future. But I thank you for that. I think the other key piece is educating our community and really educating our community on providing them maybe a list of who to contact if they see anything other than police, but just in a particular, there's no crime happening, but I have a concern. This is what I see happening in the neighborhood, and maybe we can provide that contact or a hotline so then that information can get to the team.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Pastor, that is actually happening. Not only are your calls coming to Deanna, but just in general, the community, and that's because we have been out there. We are logging them. It is a lot. One of the things, just very quickly, as we looked at the numbers when we first started all of this, we looked at numbers over several years, and the whole number of homeless that we could actually had in reports and stuff really wasn't changing, but it was absolutely churning through some of the things that were going on from the parking lot to the MOS to CAS, et cetera. But one of the things that what has happened is we are absolutely shaking everything up. And that is what I think we're seeing is there is confusion and what's happening now, and you're kind of seeing that out. And I completely agree with Commander Alexander that we're going to see that, and with Bruce that we're going to see that start to pull in. But our job, honestly, has just begun. We've got to stick together. In my 43 years of being in human services, I've seen community partners come together like this, but they don't stay together. We have been together, and we're not letting anybody out, so to speak. So anyway.
Well, the city's not going to let out any partners either, so we have to stick together. It's like a marriage. Thank you.
Then we have one more question, then we have some cards.
Speaking of partners, I know that the site has been a drop-off from DOC and traffic from the county jail. Are any of your partners probation and parole and the state? Because if they would have a transition plan and identified place to go when they left out there and transportation to get there, I think it would really reduce your numbers. So I'm just curious, because you're making great progress, but I think if we don't deal with them, we'll never end.
Chairman Nowakowski and Councilwoman Williams, there's so much going on at one time, and so thank you for entertaining this presentation, and we could probably talk to you for 4 hours or longer about everything that's going on in the region around ending homelessness. To your point, we've started conversations with Department of Corrections and really want to understand the data sharing that's available to identify people who are on community correction status and could be housed differently. So those pieces have begun. The Human Services Campus, the Lodestar Day Resource Center, is really a key element in all of this change. So one of the shifts is a single point of entry on the Human Services Campus, which was really not structured intentionally from the beginning. And so there's a different intention. And to do the assessment that Mo mentioned, every person really needs to walk through the same front door, and to have that same assessment done to then do the triage into the right system of care and make the right connection for an intervention to end their homelessness. And so at the same time, over the since February, we've been working with the campus partners to extend their hours. One of the things that would also happen is the Human Services Campus would close at 4, 5, 6 p.m. while people lined up to be in the MOS or the parking lot. With all of this changing and providing additional funding, the campus can keep that front door open longer. And when there is a drop off, whatever system it's from, the door is now open to make a warm handoff and a connection. The one ask that the partners would have is it'd be easier if there was some phone call saying we're coming with a person, rather than we're going to drop them off in the dark of night and not tell anyone. Actually just be honest and upfront about it and place a phone call to the Human Services campus and say we need to make a warm handoff with you. So that extended hours will really make a difference. And it's hard to measure right now how much change is happening and what's the difference between the number of people who are experiencing homelessness. As we get through what everyone's talked about, I think we'll have more data than we've ever had before. And part of the change too that Mo mentioned, we're building this airplane as it's flying. Part of the reason we changed tactics is because we learn from what we've been doing, and it's continuing to monitor evidence-based best practice, work with the National Alliance to End Homelessness on information around rapid rehousing as communities across the country adopt these new strategies as well. We don't want to operate in isolation and just figure it out here amongst ourselves. We have some really smart people, and there's smart people in other communities. So there's a lot of engagement with those other organizations to keep learning. So as we're building the plane gets better. But it's really around evidence-based best practice and using data to keep everything moving forward.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman, I would add, I'm a member of the Maricopa County Smart Justice Council, which has the Public Defender's Office to adult probation, the jails involved, the Sheriff's Office. And so we meet regularly to exchange. We have a major initiative about preventing recidivism into the jails. And part of that, the strategy there is very similar to homeless. It's getting people jobs as they leave jail. It's getting people mental health services. And we've got a major initiative to connect people to health care and mental health care so that they have places to go other than homelessness on the street. So I'm working closely with those groups as part of the county.
Good, thank you.
All right, we have a couple of cards. We had
And I
Tom
have
Sim.
some questions as well.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Councilman Nowakowski, should I go?
Oh, it's all yours. I'm sorry, Kate. Yeah.
Wonderful. Just wanted to first off thank our nonprofit partners and others in government who are helping with us as we address this very complicated issue. And I think it will get even more complicated. We have now reduced aid from the state. And so I think that will help, but that will hurt the people who are barely making it, and they may end up homeless. So that is unfortunate timing. And also we are going into summer, so this is even more difficult during summer. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about some of the water that will be available on the campus. We've gotten complaints that there used to be water fountains, and now those are gone, and that as summer comes in, that we are not prepared.
Yes, Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Gallego, we several years ago addressed issues with heat, and as a result of that, as a city and as a region with the partnership of Valley of Sun United Way and others, we've put together a pretty sophisticated heat relief network. So we should have, to my knowledge, ample amounts of water. We do have hydration stations when we get excessive heat warnings. There are hydration stations that are set up throughout the region, as well as Human Services within the city of Phoenix manning our heat relief efforts. We do get a large supply of water donations. So if indeed there's agencies in need of water, we can man that through the heat relief network, either within the city or through the regional.
And were the water fountains taken out because of vandalism issues, or what happened there?
The water fountains at the campus?
Yes.
Those were actually increased.
Mr. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilwoman. Could you repeat your question, please?
So there are more permanent water fountains than there used to be?
There are more temporary water fountains than there used to be.
But there are no permanent water fountains.
There are permanent water fountains, but what I was speaking of was the addition of other more water containers specifically at the parking lot, because there was some concerns that there wasn't enough potable drinking water there.
Okay. And then I had a question, since this is a public safety committee related to Block Watch. The neighborhoods around the campus really have a high impact and have a lot of issues that other neighborhoods don't see. So that could be drug paraphernalia. People have complained to us about human feces and a lot of dumping in the alleys. And last year, some of those neighborhoods applied for a Block Watch over grant, and they didn't receive it because we felt like it wasn't eligible and didn't fit within our parameters. So I guess I would like to challenge the city to be more creative and maybe be flexible. We want to look for any funding source we can to help these neighborhoods and to reduce the impact. And especially during this transition period, it's going to be very, very high impact. And we ought to be doing even more in these neighborhoods than we do elsewhere. They provide a service for all of Maricopa County and have a lot of challenges other neighborhoods don't see. So we ought to direct money preferentially to these neighborhoods. And I would say that that's something I hope to discuss with Community Development Block Grants when we talk about this at the Neighborhood Housing and Development Committee. But I think wherever we can be creative and try to get more resources to these neighborhoods and tell them we understand that you are facing challenges other neighborhoods don't see, that would really be helpful.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Gallego, one of the things that we've started to do, to your point, is we are bringing together key critical departments when we talk about neighborhood issues, whether it be streets, public works, police, human services. They are meeting on a weekly basis as we identify different issues, and then again getting creative on how we can alleviate those issues. Some may eventually require funding, so we would have to take a look at that. But initially, we're trying to look at creatively how we can alleviate the issues with the departments coming together, working collectively.
Wonderful, because we really have heard an uptick in complaints from neighborhoods, and they do have a lot of challenges. And then when we see this at the Neighborhood Housing and Development Subcommittee, it would be great to hear what other housing authorities are doing with their vouchers. So Phoenix has prioritized this for our vouchers, and it would be good to understand what other communities are doing. I really appreciated Councilman Noakowski's comments that Phoenix is leading in this area, but that this is a regional problem and we need others to step up. And it would be good to get a refresher on how other cities are funding CAS as well. We are providing a service for many, many communities, but we need them to partner with us. And so just to get a refresher on what other communities are doing, because I think we will be successful if we have more partners on this particular issue.
We can be prepared to talk about that at the Neighborhood Housing Subcommittee.
Wonderful. Thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you, Councilmember. We had Tom Simplot here, but taking his place would be former Councilmember Craig Tripkin.
Thank you, Chairman Nowakowski and committee members. Can you hear me? Yeah, Councilman Simplot, he is co-chairs the United Way subcommittee or committee that oversees homelessness, and he apologizes for having to leave. I just wanted to say really briefly that this is, I represent, as some of you know, Central Arizona Shelter Services and Arizona Housing, Inc. Arizona Housing, Inc. has about 500 units of permanent supportive housing, which will be part of this solution. I want to tell you that we're delighted to see this collaboration emerge. There will be bumps in the road. Everybody recognizes that, but this is really emergency shelter was intended to be that emergency. It wasn't intended to be a place that somebody stays forever, and we recognize that really the 21st century answer to this, that emergency shelter was a 20th century answer to a problem, and we're in the 21st century, obviously, and this is the kind of thing which needs to happen in order to really move ahead and to decrease the burden on emergency shelters. Briefly, you mentioned my primary job. You mentioned regional. My primary job has been to go out to other cities and ask them to not only to lobby for CDBG grants, and specifically for CAS in most of those cases. I'm not wed to CAS in this regard. I think every city in this region ought to have a line item dedicated to, let's say, this collaborative. That's fine, but every city ought to have a line item, and they don't. Most of them work with federal grants, and it's pass-through money, and it's a competitive grant situation where homelessness is competing with, I don't want to name anything that the local, whatever association. I won't pick on anyone, but that's the way it tends to work. And every city, we gave 12,000 nights at CAS, 12,000 nights to Glendale residents, people who are self-identified as Glendale residents. So we know the number was higher than that because that's how they identified themselves last year at CAS, and that goes on all over that is the norm. And so your help in regionalizing this is great, and we very much support this. We're, by the way, having a party on Friday night to celebrate this.
Craig, thank you for all your hard work and being an advocate for our homeless community. We also have Mike McQuaid.
Councilman Nowakowski and council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I am very much in support of what we've been talking about. And as some of you know, I've been around the homeless situation for a good while, and from the very early beginnings of Andre House to the planning and building of the Human Services Campus. And as the president of the Human Service Campus, Inc., and as a board member of Lodi Resource Center, I represent them. But I'd like to speak just for a moment as a personal citizen of Phoenix. And I don't get paid for what I do. I do it out of a passion I have to help others, to help particularly the homeless. So what you've seen today and what you've heard, I would be redundant to go through all the points that this panel has made, because it's exactly how I feel. But to see, Bruce and Mike and Amy and Jeff and Mo and Deanna at the same table, and I've been watching them now for months to get to this point, I can't tell you how gratifying that is and how good it is for our community, and particularly for the citizens that we serve. I have the luxury of not having a job that depends on it or organization that depends on this. It's best for the people we serve. And all the things that have been mentioned, from the council members to Councilman Gallegos, that's why we're doing this, is to reduce the number of people in your neighborhoods, to get people into housing. For all this time, we've been working on how to really do it better. And I can tell you, with the United Way's help, I co-chaired that council before Tom just got the position. Doug Parker and I chaired it for a long time. And this is the culmination of our community coming together. We have regionalized it. We are approaching other communities. We're building programs and housing in those areas. But for once and for all, we are going to pour services and maybe reallocate dollars, not necessarily that many new dollars, but reallocate funding into what we need, which is housing, services and housing. And so in the next 6 months, I think you'll see a world of difference at the campus. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are, and thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Mike, for all your hard work and everything you do. Any other questions? With that, well, thank you so much for advocating for our homeless community. And now it's our job to go out there and advocate among our colleagues through other cities, right? Time's up.
Here's your time.
All right, we're on item number 12. We're getting a public safety budget update. And it's all yours. Good morning.
Fire will go first. You want to go first? Who wants to go?
Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about the police department's budget through the end of March. Our current budget is $555 million. And then our monthly expenditures for March for this fiscal year is $44.9 million. and we've spent a total of $415 through the fiscal year. Top 10 expenditures are salaries at 37%, pension 13%, group health insurance is at 5.8%, sworn career enhancement 2.2%, overtime is 2.2%, jail services is 1.3%, retiree health insurance 1.2%, industrial insurance premium 1.1%, sick leave payout 0.96%, and equipment management is 0.97%.
So can you go back? So what, from last year was 2.2, and this year it's 5.2 on sick leave payout? Are officers getting more
Yes,
sick? or
on that
what's
one, it's a union negotiated item that is given to the sworn, that they're able to cash out some of their vacation time or sick time. So that's why there's a difference in that one from last fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
And some anomalies that are going on. We've had some overtime for when we had the DPS officer shooting. It was it's $273,000. We've had quite a bit of overtime for all the different protests over the last fiscal year at $358,000. Some overtime for the Super Bowl at $941,000. Pro Bowl $96,000, and then we've had some minimum staffing overtime of $755,000. And then our revenues for this fiscal year through March, court awards is $7.4 million. Our SROs, our special event revenue, is at $4.8 million. IGAs and task force at $2.1.
What was the jump on that?
On which one?
On the task force.
That one is because of a Southwest Border Alliance. We had some employees that were working on this task force, and we actually got the reimbursement for it for this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year.
Okay.
Because we were waiting on a new contract and for the funding. And then our false alarms are at 2.3. Vehicle impound is at 1.9. Our grants is at 2.7, and pawn shop is at 1.1. Any questions?
Any questions? No questions.
Thank you, Chairman Nowakowski and members of the committee. I believe we're next with fire. And much like police department, we're at 75% of the year spent at this report. So we're still trending under our total budget's $300,482,000. So, looking at our monthly expenditures in comparison to last year, they pretty much stayed on track. If you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that we're at 0.7% more this year than we were last year. A lot of that has to do with the increases that we saw in personnel services and other expenses. But pretty much we're trending exactly where we thought we would be at this time. Top 10 expenditures, much like our counterparts here in PD, salaries are the biggest thing at about 33% of the budget. Pension contributions, group health insurance, constant staffing. That's the overtime that's spent to keep all the folks on the truck when there's people absent. Equipment charges keep the trucks on the road. Deferred comp is just time that's traded off. Industrial insurance is pretty self-explanatory. Part-time ambulances, that's where we staff our peak time or in between hours for the ambulances. Medical services is the medical providers that we use to do both the assessment in our health centers as well as the doctor that does medical control for our paramedics who are out in the field. And then lastly, medical and dental are the supplies that we use and actually recoup these expenses to some extent in our ambulance transports.
So you're up about $1 million on medical and dental.
That's correct.
Why is that?
I wouldn't have an exact answer unless I drilled into that. Okay. Some of that has to do with how those are, because it's a large contract we spend about $1 million a month on. Sometimes it's how many things were ordered that month, but overall our trends are pretty close to what they were last year. Some of this is financial reporting, so I'd have to match it up with what we actually do as far as service.
And you talked about recouping some of that. Maybe you can come back to my office later on and we can talk about where was the extra $1 million expense and how do we actually recoup that from the ambulance services?
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
A few other things going through the revenues collected. A large portion of our revenues come from our ambulance transports. They are actually up this year. I believe just over $1 million at this point. Dispatch fees are up slightly. This is the monies that we charge our partnering communities for each dispatch to recoup the expense of the center. And then the maintenance fees are much the same. Those are pretty close. That's all we have for fire.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Happy to be here today to talk about the municipal court's budget. So through the first 9 months of the fiscal year, you can see that we've spent about $19.7 million. That's out of a budgeted year of approximately $27.5 million. Sorry about that. And as we can see on the next slide, especially if we go to the bottom of it, that means that to this point in the year, we're 9.6% under in terms of year-over-year spending. And as you look at the various months there, on the next slide, which we won't go to yet, I'll come back to it, we're going to see that the breakdown here is almost overwhelmingly personnel costs. And so if you look at the months throughout the fiscal year that we've had so far, and you look at the variance on the far right-hand side, you can see that sometimes there's a significant variance in the variance. And if you look back at, for example, the months particularly of November, December, and January of late last year, early this year, those were times when we had seen quite a bit of staff leaving the court, and we had not filled positions. So that represents times that were, I would say, particularly stressful for some members of the court, but we have managed, as you can see, to come back and are able to have filled positions that have made it more manageable. If you go to the next slide, we break down those top 10 expenditures. And as you can see, if you look at it, literally the top 9 are all personnel directly or personnel related. We've got special contractual services at the bottom, which is largely some of the things that we hope we will not have to pay in the future, such as contracts for data entry, that as we work with the police department and their new RMS system going into place, we hope will be something that's no longer necessary. But as you can see, almost overwhelmingly, personnel costs. Get to the last page and we look at the revenue so far. As we've talked about the last couple of times that we have talked about and reported on the budget to you, we have seen declining general fund revenues coming into the court. As we've discussed, that trend continues. There's nothing surprising in it this year. We've seen that as a direct result of reductions in filings, particularly civil traffic ticket filings. One of the opportunities that has afforded us this year, you have probably already seen in the city manager's proposed budget to you, and that is that with reductions in filings, we've taken the opportunity and are planning to be able to draw down by a full civil courtroom and a full criminal courtroom. That'll better align what our resources or where our resources are positioned with regard to cases coming in, and we're working hard to make sure that we can do that without impacting, the direct services. One of the things that we take very seriously at the court is making sure that cases can be adjudicated expeditiously, so that once the case comes and is filed with the court, it does not take months and months and languishes there. And we're confident that we'll be able to do that and make those reductions over the course of the next 7 weeks or so, and still maintain what are pretty high standards in that department of times to disposition.
Any questions or concerns? I just really want to thank you for bringing this budget up to us. I think it's so important that individuals get to see that our public safety departments are good stewards of their tax dollars that are out there. So thank you so much, and thank you for cutting those corners where we need to cut and making our city run safely. Thanks. With that, we have item number 13.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I'm Mike Kurtenbach. I'm an assistant chief with the Phoenix Police Department. The Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, which I'll refer to as POST from now on, mandates that every police officer in the state of Arizona receive 8 hours of continuing training on various topics annually and 8 hours of proficiency training on such topics as firearms, driving, arrest tactics every 3 years. Under Chief Yonner's leadership, the Phoenix Police Department is committed to providing thought-provoking, relevant, reality-based training which meets and exceeds the standards as provided by POST. Excuse me. Recent events locally and nationally have emphasized the need for such training and the criticality of equipping our officers with the tools necessary to effectively serve the citizens of Phoenix. Many of those tools are best acquired through concentrated in-service training. On April 21st, 2015, the Phoenix Police Department instituted a 40-hour training module for all sworn employees, which is being provided in the adult learning environment of the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy. Now, it's important to note that this is the first training module that we've been able to provide our officers in the length of 40 hours since fiscal year 2005-2006. In fiscal year 06-07, we provided a 30-hour training module for our employees. And since, we've only been able to provide either 8-hour training modules annually or other requisite training necessary to meet POST requirements. Now, as I'm sure you can appreciate, it is a challenge to deliver such training to the approximately 2,755 sworn members of the Phoenix Police Department, many of whom work assignments throughout the city, different hours, different days of the week. Consequently, this module is scheduled to run through September of 2016, and it will require a significant commitment of manpower, funding, and resources. And during these two budget cycles, this fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year, the department expects to incur $2.2 million in overtime expenses, which will ensure that the citizens receive quality, continued customer service from officers, because we'll have to pay overtime to backfill those positions, and also maximize the opportunity for officer safety when officers are taken off of the street and are down in training. Now, if you'll indulge me, what I'd like to do is take a few moments to actually talk about the classes that will comprise this curriculum. And it's important to note that the way we're doing this 40-hour training module is broken out over 4 10-hour days. And each day has a theme. So day 1 are general issues in policing and officer health and wellness. Day 2, mental health, disorders and response. Day 3 is focused on tactics and firearms, and day 4 principally on driving. And real briefly, I'd just like to highlight the classes because I think it's important for you to understand, for the community to understand the type of training that we are providing to our officers. I mentioned day 1, general issues in policing and health and wellness. We'll provide our officers, and are providing, since the module has already started, with training on the Employee Assistance Program, the Police Department's Employee Assistance Unit, remind our officers the importance of regular health and exercise and positive behaviors. We've also carved out a separate class that focuses specifically on post-traumatic stress disorder. We're giving our officers the tools to recognize certain signs and symptoms of PTSD, and again, reaffirming the resources that are available to them or to their coworkers should those signs and symptoms manifest themselves. Also, as this council is aware, we'll be bringing a new records management system online here in the very near future. It's been some time since all of our officers and detectives have gone through concentrated RMS training, so we're providing some refresher training for those officers. And then there's a 4th course that will begin on day 1 and also will continue to day 4 of the module that I'll talk about at the end. So moving on to day 2. Day 2 begins with a refresher course for all of our officers on our use of force policy. Operations Order 1.5 specifically talks about the range of force that our officers can use. We'll do a refresher on all of that, our use of force options, and also talk about the proficiency requirements associated with certain use of force options, such as the carotid control technique, pepper spray, and the use of the taser. And also there will be a focus on escalation and de-escalation of use of force. Then there'll be a course on team arrest tactics, and the purpose of this, again, is to give our officers tools so they can safely effect arrests, thereby minimizing the opportunity of there being injuries to the subject that is being arrested or the officers that are effecting that arrest. The next part is active listening. We're having Our special assignments unit come in, our negotiators provide some basic negotiator training and listening training to our officers so that they can effectively address individuals that they encounter that are in crisis. After they receive this classroom portion of the training, then we're going to put them through exercises so that they can apply what they learned. And they can take that with them back out to the street. The next class is mental health disorder and response. The beginning is classroom portion, where we want to identify for our officers certain mental health disorders that they may encounter in the field, whether that be schizophrenia, perhaps mood, personality, or anxiety disorders, those signs and symptoms again. And then we'll teach them de-escalation techniques so that they can effectively deal with those in crisis that they encounter through the course of their duties. And just as if with the active listening exercises, we'll be putting our officers through several active or mental health disorder exercises so they can apply the lessons that they learned in the classroom portion of the training. The next day, day 3, is really focused on tactics. We're going to put the officers through some classroom training on situational and tactical analysis, threat assessment. We'll look at incidents that have happened locally and nationally, break those down. The Phoenix Police Department does its job to the best of its ability, but there's always room for improvement, as with other agencies throughout the country. So it's important that we learn from our past so that mistakes don't repeat themselves. And then we put the officers actually out on the range and do some live firearms training, whether it be working on marksmanship, clearance drills, different scenario-based training. Then we'll move the officers into our tactical training village, where they will be equipped with simunition guns. Some people refer to them as paintball guns, and we'll put them through some live exercises as well with actors on building clearing, traffic stops, downed citizen rescues, and the such. Day 4 focuses on driving safety. As I believe you know, there are more officers that are killed from driving incidents than any other single incident in the United States. So there'll be some classroom instruction, and then from the classroom instruction, time spent out on the driving track learning new techniques. And the last course of study is 8 hours of cultural consciousness training. And we request that the subcommittee recommend that the City Council approve entering into a contract with the Whitaker Group to provide this cultural consciousness training. It is proposed that this topic be presented by Dr. Matthew Whitaker, Professor of History and Founding Director of the Center for the Study of Race and Democracy at Arizona State University. Dr. Whitaker is a Phoenix native. He attended St. Matthew's Elementary School. He is an ASU alumnus, and he is an expert in the fields of African American history, civil rights, race relations, and social movements. Now, this 8-hour block of instruction will focus on key issues facing law enforcement today. Any day that goes by, if you turn on the television, you see that many of the 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States are facing challenges. We as the Phoenix Police Department don't want to be one of those 18,000 agencies. We want to be a leader in providing key training for our officers so that they can best serve their community. This training, again, is 8 hours over 2 days. It's proposed that this training be delivered on day 1 and day 4, as I alluded to earlier, and it'll focus on many topics to include procedural justice and police legitimacy. That concludes my presentation.
Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Who teaches all of these classes, and what are their qualifications? How did you select them?
So the vast majority of the classes, with the exception of the cultural competency class, are taught by general instructors that are mostly assigned to the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy, Phoenix police officers. Every course that is taught for credit must have an assigned lesson plan that is approved by the entire chain of command and ultimately approved by Arizona Post. That's the only way the officers can get credit for those certifications for continuing and proficiency training. I have a staff down at ALEA that is sole purpose is training, in-service and basic training. So to answer your question, Council Member, it is those officers that provide that training.
And how did you determine that Dr. Whitaker was the best to have? Did you do an RFP, a sole source, reputation?
Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Williams, this was a sole source request. As we move forward with this training, and as you know, there was some transition within the Phoenix Police Department. When you combine that transition with those aforementioned challenges locally and nationally, we felt it imperative that we move forward as quickly as possible. When you look at Dr. Whitaker's credentials, his experience providing similar training locally and nationally. He's provided training in the UK, he's provided training to other law enforcement agencies, he's provided training in Africa. And because of his local knowledge, being a native, we believe that he was the best source to provide this training to our officers. Also, it's important to understand that when we talk about in-service training that spans roughly 17 months, the very reason that we normally provide that training, meaning Phoenix police officers to Phoenix police officers, it's hard to get a commitment to have somebody come in for the outside over that time. Dr. Whitaker is committed to coming in to provide each one of these classes over that time. That's something that we believe is highly valuable for the consistency of the training.
And I agree. I think that's an essential component of it. And one thing I didn't hear you mention is the fact that, as the world is evolving, ISIS and outside cultures, homeland security, is there anything you're doing to incorporate, to advise our officers the connections, identifications, how to report when they see something that's unusual? Because I have heard from some other members that our staff works with that we are very active in Arizona with potential terrorists, and that I think it would be important that our officers are aware how to identify or at least suspect and report.
So, Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Williams, you raise an excellent point. It's important to recognize that this 40-hour training is not the only training that we provide to our officers. This 40-hour training module is training where we actually bring the officers down to the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy, but we are on a regular basis, sometimes daily, pushing information such as local, national terroristic threats out to our officers so they can identify certain indicators, so that they are aware, so that they are armed with knowledge so that they can patrol the streets safely. So that's something that we recognize, ma'am, and that's something that we do regularly.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Any other questions?
I have a question because I'm thinking broader. I know it's starting within the police department, but I'm also thinking of our PMP, our other groups that are participating in our communities about some training and cultural competency. Has that been a thought, or we're just, and I know why it wouldn't be, because right now we're working on this piece, but for the future, if there's a possibility of incorporating some of this in the trainings, that'd be great. Thank you.
I have a few questions.
Councilmember Gallegos.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chairman, for putting this on the agenda. This was one I had requested. It is of great interest and importance to me, and I think both to our community and our officers. We've heard from all sorts of stakeholders that we need to do more training in the city of Phoenix, and I am so glad that this is a priority in the city manager's recommended budget. I hope we will become a national model and really break some ground here. And I'm also very glad that we are watching what the rest of the country is doing. On occasion, I've shared some of the national research with our police department, and they've already been reading it. So I'm glad that we are trying to learn as much as we can from other communities, because this really is a national conversation. I have had some opportunity to speak with some of the District 8 stakeholders about this, and wanted to share some of the information that they gave to me, including strong support for Dr. Whitaker. People said that they appreciated his experience with other agencies, including it more locally at Arizona State, and that also that we needed to keep history in mind when we talk about this type of training, and that his background in that area was very helpful. I did get a lot of information from folks that they said they wanted to make sure that cultural consciousness and mental health are not separated, that they are very related. So I wanted to ask about that, and then also wanted to ask about whether the training would include identification. Right now there are so many different forms of identification people within the city of Phoenix use, and we wanted to make sure that the identification common among people who are here through the DACA program, the Deferred Action for Citizens Arrival program, is something that our officers are aware of. And also, as we expand our significant trade agenda, that our officers get some information about diplomatic credentials. We heard a little bit from the business community. That's something that will become more important, and that the state police at least did not have much training on. So wanted to ask those two questions about mental health and the identification.
So, Mr. Chairman, Councilwoman Gallego, it's important to note that the way we propose to deliver this cultural consciousness training is over 2 days quite deliberately. By providing 6 hours of training on the first day and 2 hours on the last day, the thought process is to give our officers certain information that they can reflect on. They'll be woven into day 2 and day 3 of training, and then as Dr. Whitaker brings them back on day 4, we can tie it all together. Day 2, if you remember, focuses specifically on mental health disorder and response. So while they are standalone classes, there are issues that are woven in between all of our classes so that the training is meaningful. I don't know if that addresses your concern specifically.
One of the feedback I got from my African American advisory group was that some of the mental health issues that were also related to cultural competency. So we can talk offline if maybe that is easier, but that you couldn't separate the two.
Fair enough.
And also got great feedback about your decision to include the faith community in this, and also diverse populations, including our refugee community, because what the refugee community thinks and knows about police departments are so different than those of us who have spent our entire life in this country, and just always good to be reminded of the background people bring to interactions with law enforcement, and that just because someone looks a certain way, they may have a very different experience. And so I'm glad that that will be part of our training.
It is. Thank you, Councilwoman. And that's why I believe the Phoenix Police Department is a foremost leader in training such as this, because we recognize the need to engage the entire community and provide our officers with training which make us better as we serve that community.
Thank you, Councilmember.
And I also wanted to, I'm not sure if you answered this, but with forms of ID, I understand there'll be training on things like DACA and that sort of status.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman Gallego, while that isn't included in this training, that's part of that ongoing training that I alluded to earlier that we provide with our officers.
Okay, I had understood differently from the city manager. I will. Thank you for that update. So officers will not get that this year, but maybe get it over a few years?
Not as part of this training module specifically, but again, as needs arise and the importance to provide training to our officers, we provide continuous training to them. So again, it's important to note, not included specifically in the curriculum for this 40-hour module, but there's still ongoing training throughout the year.
So what % of our officers might be familiar with deferred action and the IDs someone with that status might have?
Quite honestly, I could not intelligently answer that question. I would like to believe that many of our officers are very educated, but this is another one of those areas where there's room for improvement, and we'll strive to accomplish just that.
Wonderful. Well, we could continue that conversation. I think we've heard that there is an opportunity to improve in that area, and I'd understood that this training would include that, so would like to understand. But I am very glad of many of the things it including the use of force training. That's another that we have heard often from the community that we want to follow national best practices on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have Councilmember Pastor. You had a comment?
Just may I suggest that we, with the DACA, with the ever evolving of the DACA ID and obviously the diplomat ID, if we could be conscious of the fact that that's always evolving, and if we could just provide ongoing training as things progress. I think it's important because it changes, it looks differently, and just be aware, have awareness of it.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
And Chief, could we actually add that in there? I know that right now the Board of Regents and our community colleges just allowed the DACA students to have in-state tuition. So there'll be a lot more using of transportation, a lot more driving back and forth from home to school. And I think our officers should know about that new, it's basically the DREAM Act students that have their IDs now, that they should know which IDs or which paperwork and all that, because I believe it's going to be a lot more, it's going to increase within this next spring, the fall.
Mr. Chairman, I agree that that's very important, so we'll include that as a separate training for our officers, and we'll get that out to them as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gallegos, for bringing that up.
I actually had one other thing that I had forgot to ask.
The voice from heaven.
I am off in D.C. as part of a GPEC mission, and so apologize for not being there with you in person, but it is a busy week in D.C. and lots of good presents for Police Week as well. This, it looks like, is the contract with Dr. Whitaker is a year contract with an optional extension. I think it's something we will definitely want to continue, but I would love it to come back to council after a year. This is one of the items that I hear about most often in my community and want the council to have an active role in. So would it be possible for it to come back to council after a year?
Absolutely, Councilmember.
Wonderful, thank you.
Already, we have we have 3 cards. Sean, if you want to come on it. Madsen.
Thank you, Chairman Nowakowski, members of this committee. My name is Sean Matson. I'm the president of the Phoenix Police Sergeants and Lieutenants Association. I'm here to voice our support in this upcoming module. It's, as the chief just alluded to, it's been the better part of almost a decade since we've been through module training, and this module is jam-packed. Most of the training, myself and my colleagues over at the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association have had the opportunity to preview the training. It's valuable training. Cops like tactics, but one thing that many police across this nation forget is part of tactics is interpersonal communications. We've built that into this module. It's great training from very educated teachers, both in the field, the cops, as well as Dr. Whitaker. Part of that training is one of the things that Councilwoman Gallego said that she would like to have built in, which is a history component. Dr. Whitaker does a really good job of building history as well as making sure that it's relatable and professional, and it's done in an adult learning environment. Tough topics to tackle that are done in a way that's relatable to folks on both sides of the issues. The plea was unable to attend today. They're actually, but I spoke with him this morning. They're in D.C. putting Detective Hobbs' name on the memorial wall. But they also wanted to make sure that I delivered the message that they're in support of this year's module. And we look forward to continuing the re-implementing module, which I know Chief Yonner, grade A, world-class chief, wants to get back to training since we've abandoned that for so long. Also, just so this council, because I heard some conversation, just so this council is aware, I'm just going to echo some of the things that Chief Kurtenbach said. We do other training, and that training is provided via video format, and that's stuff that needs to get pressed out early. And I know that a lot of that training is reactionary once we see a training gap from the community or this council. And so obviously, I mean, I have faith and trust that DACA, I have never been trained in DACA, but I look forward to that training because that training gap was just identified. So anyway, I'm open to questions either now or in the future on this module, and I just wanted to echo my support. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and member of this committee for your time and continued support with the Phoenix Police Department.
Thank you so much. We have another question. Okay, we have Mrs. Rogers. If you like to sit at the table, you can.
Thank you very much.
You got your bodyguards there.
Delayed reaction. I just want to commend the Phoenix Police Department for excellence of service, always professional and respectful. And in my opinion, and I've only lived here most of my life in Ohio and born in Lancaster, PA, and I hardly remember that. And I never talked to a cop when I was between the ages of birth and 5. So I don't know what they're like there. This is the best large municipal police department in the United States of America, bar none. I hear, I see, I read about other large municipal departments when they make headlines for doing something egregiously wrong. Never have I read a headline about this department doing something egregiously wrong. They are 5-star, and we owe them our full support, and we owe them appropriately our full financial support. Appropriately is the key word. I want them to be able to wear cotton shirts in the summertime again. The hell with polyester and living in a sauna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. We have one more, Jerome, or Jeremy, sorry, Jeremy. He's not here, okay. Alrighty, that's it then. Well, thank you so much for all your hard work and the training, and something that's really needed out there, and it's gonna help out the men and women in uniform. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there?
And just to confirm, does the motion include bringing this back in a year?
Yes.
And I approve Dr. Whitaker? Correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Alrighty, any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes.
I just have a comment, Dr. Whitaker. I happened yesterday late at night just to be on Facebook and read a really great story about how being a local boy and a stranger in the CVS recognized him and approached him and said, you know, aren't you that doctor that does all these things in the community? And he said, yes. And he says, well, I'm very proud of you because you're one of our local boys, you come from our community, and that you're doing great service. And I think it's very important to understand that we have history here that we need to understand, and why certain things are still happening within our communities today, and how we need to bridge and heal and be conscious of some of the things that we do within our communities. And so I commend Dr. Whitaker for sharing the story, because it was a great story, but I think it's valuable to have somebody that understands our history. So thank you.
Any other comments? Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Chief. Alrighty, the next item is item number 14. It's the presiding judge selection process.
Why are they not doing it?
And before we start, I just want to let people know that over the last month or so, there's been a lot of backroom discussions about this whole process, and that unfortunately individuals are thinking that there might be a hidden agenda and that we canceled the selection committee. And the reason why is basically, I just want some clarification that everybody knows, is that this is the first time that I've ever been through this process of selecting a presiding judge. And there's some of my colleagues that had that same concern and wanted to go into e-session to actually ask some questions to our attorney and to figure out what the process was. So after getting those requests, I asked the mayor to have an e-session, not just with the subcommittee members, but for our whole council. I thought it was important that all of my colleagues, because there's a lot of us that haven't been through this process before. So that was why the cancellation of the selection committee happened, basically so that we can get informed about the process. We can get informed about what the duties are of the selection committee. And we want to make it very clear that we value the selection committee, the Judicial Selection Advisory Board, and their expertise that they have. But one of the things that we learned is that there's a minimum of 3 candidates that the selection committee can forward up to the council. Some of the concerns that myself and some colleagues had was that there was only 8 applicants that applied for this prestigious job, and a job that's basically the court system that we have that is the premier throughout the whole country. So we wanted to ask some questions, or I wanted to ask some questions on the recruitment process and to get those questions answered and to make sure that we went through the full list. We hired, we're going to approve 2 headhunters for positions that we're looking for in this formal meeting that we're having this afternoon, and just wanted to figure out why we didn't do that same process of looking for a headhunter to suggest those names to the selection committee. The other concern that I have is that we have a minimum of 4, and that's 3 people that were suggested to us, and that's the minimum. We had 8 individuals that applied, and 5 were interviewed. I was just suggesting and wondering, why didn't we send up all 5 names if they were all qualified? And if they weren't qualified, then that we should have some type of conversation with this committee to find out or to figure out why those individuals weren't qualified to be forwarded up. I believe that we should have a large pool to choose from. This is such a prestigious position in the city of Phoenix. It's a position that affects every single council district. It affects the whole city of Phoenix and all of our residents in somehow, some way. So to make sure that we got the best and that we recruited the best individuals, the 3 individuals that I've been able to look at their resumes are excellent candidates, and I believe all 3 would be great presiding judges, but I would really like to look for a larger pool to choose from. And that's why we basically had that executive session, and it was nothing regarding any of the 3 individuals that were chosen or the selection committee itself. With that, I pass it on to y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Karen Peters, among other things, the city manager's liaison to the Phoenix Municipal Court, and I'll be very brief and talk a little bit about what the charter and code and the JSAB rules provide in terms of the process for selecting a chief presiding judge. As you know, the Honorable Roxanne Song Ong retired late last year. She had been serving in the chief presiding role since 2005. Since her retirement, Judge Eric Jeffrey has been appointed by the council as the acting chief presiding judge. He also has served as the assistant chief presiding judge since 2005. So the City of Phoenix, through its charter and its code, provides a process for evaluating and recommending candidates for appointment to the municipal court bench. The code establishes a judicial selection advisory board to recruit and evaluate candidates. That board, in turn, has rules of procedure that govern its work, and in total, the process thoroughly vets prospective judges and is very transparent to the public, with many opportunities to participate and provide opinions regarding the candidates, all in compliance with Arizona's open meeting law. At its meeting on March 11th, 2015, as the chairman indicated, the JSAB did meet, conduct interviews, and forwarded 3 names to the council as their recommended candidates for the chief presiding judge position. And with that, I'm very happy to answer any questions, and of course, Mr. Brown is here as well.
Any questions? Councilmember Pastor?
Actually have several questions, but this morning when I arrived, I received this letter, or we all received this letter from the mayor, and it's regarding the appointment of the chief presiding judge. And in it, it says, because the JSAB has made its recommendation, the code mandates that the council interview those candidates. Accordingly, I will ask the full council to interview the 3 JSAB recommended candidates at the June 9th policy meeting. The item will be posted for action, and the council will have the option to select a chief presiding judge at the time if it chooses to do so, in the event that the city council will need to deliberate about next steps and possible actions. I'm also calling an executive session to take place at that time. So Dan, what are our 3 options now that this has been placed? And it basically, to me, how I read it or understand it, we don't have an authority, or maybe we do have some authority, or maybe we suggest as a subcommittee, but this has been taken now up to council. this process.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor. So at this point, well, first of all, under the City Code, Section 2-96, the mayor does have that authority. But at this point, the options presented before the subcommittee in conformance with 2-96 is the subcommittee could simply say they'll defer to the mayor and take no action. There's always the no action alternative, if you will. The subcommittee may also proceed prior to June 9th to interview the 3 candidates if it so wishes, as authorized under the city code. Or the other option is that the subcommittee may continue the 3 and make a request again to the JSAB to not only forward additional candidates to this subcommittee, but to the full council if it wishes. And then finally, it could just simply make no recommendation and forward the final 3 candidates to interview. So in other words, those are the options. In addition to the 3 options we have tentatively discussed with the mayor's letter, you could just simply take no action in some.
Okay, because I'm reading it very differently. I don't know, because it says, I will ask the full council to interview the 3 JSAB. So whatever action we take, if it's not within this preview, then, I mean, I'm dumbfounded right now.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor, again, with regard, the process normally contemplates that this subcommittee makes a recommendation to the full council. So consistent with that, this subcommittee may make a recommendation consistent with the mayor's memorandum. And so, or it can simply make any other recommendation. So you still have the authority to make a recommendation, but even the city code contemplates the final action is taken by the city council. So that's consistent. The mayor's memo is consistent with that process as laid out in the city code.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilmember Williams?
I really don't have a question. I have some concerns because I believe in the process. I think that it's been very important that we follow what the charter is and that we recognize that this committee does have the authority to vet people to send to us, and that is done on a merit. It has very strict guidelines. I was very surprised. I didn't know about that memo until we were down here about to start this meeting. For me, at this point, I think that we should just take no action. The mayor has stepped forward and said it will go to the full council and let the process work.
I have a question is, so who selects the members of this JSAB committee? Is it a person
Chairman.
from each of our district, or is it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, the city code prescribes who serves on the JSAB, the Judicial Selection Advisory Board. There is a representative of the Superior Court of Maricopa County. There is an appellate court judge appointed by the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court. There is a member of the Maricopa County Bar Association who is chosen by the mayor from 3 candidates recommended by the bar. Similarly, there's a State Bar of Arizona representative. And again, the mayor selects from 3 candidates submitted by the State Bar for that position. And then in addition to that, the mayor has the authority to appoint 3 public members. So there are 7 in total. There are prescribed
So
positions.
from the 7, how many does the mayor get to appoint?
Well, the 3 public members are his appointments, and then the 2 bar association appointments are made by him from a list recommended by the bars.
So that's a total of 5, right, out of the 7?
Yes.
Comments?
And we're just, I mean, out of just due diligence and me being a deliberate person, wanting to know facts and wanting to know process and understanding process. What I'm understanding is we will never know why the two were never sent up.
Mr. Chairman, Councilwoman Pastor, if the JSAB were to agree and vote to waive the privilege of the executive session, perhaps they could explain, but I think that the rules are very clear and protect the applicants. That's the intent of the rules.
Excuse me for just a second. I think there's something, people are texting saying that Channel 11's off the air. All right. If we can take a little break for a couple of minutes, if I figure that out.
I can see you on phoenix.gov.
There you go. Kate says she can see.
Is it back on? Okay, it's back on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Go for it. Sorry about that.
No, I'm just asking, and I think Karen answered. Okay. I think I'm done.
Absolutely.
You know, I know this is a very difficult situation, and I think everyone who applied is to be well respected. They have served this community, most of them very, very well, or are continuing to serve this committee. We know from the names, we have had them before us, but I think we have to respect their privacy as well, because I certainly wouldn't want to have any negativity reflected on them by saying why they weren't chosen, because I think they're great people. And I don't know if they meet the administrative qualifications. I wasn't party to that, but I think that's part of our process, is to interview and decide upon that. If the council interviewed the three and said, no, thank you. We would like you to go back. Is that permissible?
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Williams, absolutely. The city code provision contemplates that all candidates that are recommended be interviewed, but after the interviews, the council may entertain any action it wishes, including no action or no recommendation, and then to move forward with reopening the position.
You know, because I think it's very important that we understand by the interviews where this court is headed. I mean, we have an outstanding court system. We are nationally recognized and perhaps even international because we're innovative and very, very productive and have the best. I think it's important that the council does do an interview. We all have different goals. We have a different vision. We want to see perhaps different courts created, emphasis or priorities placed more on one than another as we move forward, because we already know some of the cases have diminished, but other social issues have risen. And so I think it's a good process, it's a healthy process, and it puts it back in the open. So I'm still very supportive of the council going forward and doing the interviews.
We actually have 4 cards, if my colleagues would entertain listening to the 4 individuals at this time.
Sure.
All right. We have Arthur Garcia. Absolutely.
She started.
I was going to say good morning, but it's almost good afternoon. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, my name is Arthur Garcia. I was born in Phoenix, a few blocks from here, obviously not here anymore. The mayor said that the Phoenix judicial selection process is based on Arizona's incredible, successful merit-based system. The mayor is wrong. I'll say that again. The mayor's wrong. The Arizona system is incredibly successful because it provides for diversity. The Phoenix selection system does not. The Phoenix City Code prohibits the consideration of diversity in the selection of candidates to be recommended to the subcommittee and to the city council. Furthermore, the code does not provide for diversity of membership of the selection committee or for geographical diversity of the Judicial Selection Committee. The Arizona Constitution, pursuant to the amendments adopted by the people of Arizona, provides that diversity may be considered in the selection of the candidates submitted to the governor. In fact, the website of the Judicial Nominating Commission states that our mission is to nominate candidates with outstanding qualifications who reflect to the extent possible the diversity of our communities. Now, that's the state judiciary system. The Constitution states the commission shall consider the diversity of the state's population. However, the primary consideration should be merit. The Constitution also provides for geographical diversity, while the city code does not. On the Appellate Court Commission, the Constitution provides that no more than 2 members of the commission shall reside in the same county. As for the trial court appointment commissions, the Constitution provides that no more than 3 members, 2 non-attorneys, and 1 attorney shall reside in each county supervisorial district. This is to prevent having all the members sit either in Southeast Phoenix, Paradise Valley, or Scottsdale, as under the old system. I recommend that in order to correct the deficiencies of the city selection process, that the Judiciary Selection Committee should be composed of a non-attorney from each city council district, hopefully appointed by the district representative, and 3 attorneys representing the state judiciary, state bar, and county bar. The attorneys must reside in different districts. The Judicial Selection Committee should reflect the population the diversity of the population of the city. As you know, that the Judicial Selection Committee has attempted to justify their selections by describing them. Oh, okay, I'll be real quick then. By describing them as best qualified. In 1992, when we amended the Arizona Constitution, the opponents to the proposed amendments argued that the best qualified were nominated under the then existing system. But few, if any, women or minorities were nominated. When the amendments were adopted, that changed. I will have one final comment. I'm so amazed at the diversity of this subcommittee. I didn't expect it in my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any questions?
I have several questions. Okay. So, oh no, sorry. First question is, if this moves, we have the authority to recommend anything amongst ourselves or whatever, and we say we recommend to send all 5. It will go, what's the process? It'll go to JSAB. JSAB has then the authority to say yes or no. When's the next meeting with JSAB?
I don't know specifically. I understand that they were looking at a date in late June that they could convene to talk about reappointments that are pending. So I don't know exactly whether there has been a date set or not.
Okay. So if it's late June, then this letter is saying June 9th. So there's a possibility that JSAB won't meet until late June. I mean, they could meet earlier, sooner, but there is the possibility of that.
That's correct.
Okay. So then this would be on our agenda or on a council June 9th. I'm just following the pattern.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay. So then June 9th, we would interview at that point 3 candidates. And at that moment, we will go into exec session.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor, yes, we are going to notice the session on June 9th as for possible executive session and discussion.
Okay.
Or we can make a recommendation to continue it until the JSAB sends or makes a decision on sending all 5 or not.
Chairman Nowakowski, that is correct. At the council meeting, that certainly could be an action that the council, a majority of council may wish to happen or undertake.
We still have 3 other cards. I'd like to entertain those. All right, we got Charles Fannell, is it? You can sit at the table or the microphone, whatever you feel more comfortable. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir. To the committee, Chairperson Nowakowski.
You got it right.
Did I get it?
You got it.
All right, great. Councilwoman Williams, Councilwoman Pastor, and on the satellite is Councilwoman
Gallegos.
Gallego.
She's in heaven right now.
Not quite.
Yes, good morning. I'll be brief because some of the comments that I was going to share has been mentioned here this morning, so I won't be redundant. However, I would like to just share some concerns. My name is Charles Fannell. I am the NAACP president for the state of Arizona. And however, I reside here in Phoenix and have been here for over 70 years. My main concern is diversity. This is one of the best run cities in the world. However, diversity is lacking. the 6th largest city in the nation. I think we can do a lot better. In yesterday's paper, and I think you probably have seen that paper, it says judicial hopefuls list lacks diversity. I think enough said. No women or minorities among city court finalists. I have some major concerns about that, and I hope we can do something better to improve that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have next Nathan Newts.
Good morning, Chairman Nowakowski. I also happen to live in your district. Good morning also to Councilwomen Williams, Pastor, and Gallegos by satellite. I am a member of the legal community here in Phoenix, and I have never heard anyone in any situation ever said they wanted anything to be more political. And to that end, for our courts here, we try to avoid that by having this committee, including Diane Johnson of the Court of Appeals, to review candidates. And it does two things, this committee. One, it separates the direct politics of having just the board or the city council decide who will be the presiding judge. And two, it allows people from the legal community to vet candidates and pass on names they believe are truly qualified for the position at hand. And with respect to diversity, going back throughout this process, we see that of the 20 judges on the court here in Phoenix, we have 10 women, 10 men. We have 5 who identify as Hispanic or Latino. We have 3 who identify as African American. We have the first openly gay judge. This process has worked well in promoting diversity in this court. And the fact that this time, in this one instance, the 3 candidates happen to be white males or are white males, I do not believe should cause the level of alarm that we're experiencing here, and is certainly not a reason to set aside this process which has helped our city to have such qualified judges to help us and work with our different departments and promote the justice of the city. It's somewhat concerning to members of the legal community, at least myself and those I know, that it seems like a political interference with the courts, which most of us would agree, if not all of us, should be as removed as possible from politics. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then the last person to speak is Patience.
Good morning, council members. Can you hear me on the phone, Councilwoman Gallego?
I can.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to get directly to my 2 points, both of which are directed at the whole subcommittee, but specifically at its chair, Mr. Nowakowski. My first point is the undesirable precedent that you seem willing to set for future years by departing from the lawfully prescribed procedure for selecting judges. The chief presiding judge, whose appointment you in any way pressure, manipulate, or jury rig, or you are perceived as doing that, over the heads of the duly appointed citizen body, will inevitably be perceived as beholden to you and to those who support you in this endeavor. The loser will be the public's confidence in the justice system. This is not Arizona's nationally recognized model merit selection, or at least it should not be. Mr. Chairman, my second point is a question. In the past weeks up until now, you were pursuing a mission of portraying the finalists as unacceptably non-diverse. Did you not know that one of the finalists, Judge Kevin Kane, is openly gay? Why did you not recognize that as a historic milestone for diversity? I have been involved in the struggle for diversity for probably 3 decades, and I believe that there is not one acceptable kind of diversity or only one acceptable outcome in diverse selection, come what may. Did you forget the gay community, which you as an elected official serve, and which I might add has given you significant support? As someone who is not gay, I can well imagine the encouragement felt by the gay residents, including gay people of color, and particularly its vulnerable young people, that a gay person can be openly gay and be judged on his merits and ascend to a finalist for the position of leadership in the judiciary. I represent 45 women of all professions who have written in support of Judge Kane as a step forward in the annals of diversity. We do not appreciate women's rights being used as an excuse or pretext for political interference in the selection of judges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other cards? Any other comments?
I still want to get clarity. Because June 9th is where we're going to vote on this.
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Pastor, at the end of the day, whatever recommendation this subcommittee may make, ultimately, as set forth in the mayor's memo, the matter will be presented to the full council to interview the 3 candidates that have been recommended by the JSAB. At the end of the day, that's where this lies.
All right, I'd like to make some comments. There's some comments that were directed to me. First of all, I'm not engaging in gossiping. And ma'am, I did not know there was an openly gay candidate until it came out in the article. So I want to let you know that I'm a strong advocate for equal rights, equal pay, and for all minorities. So I take offense to that statement. The other thing is that I'd like to see an open process. I like to see every qualified candidate come in front of us. I believe that the selection committee is there is to vet those individuals that aren't qualified to come in front of us to actually have us choose the best possible person. I've been sitting on this subcommittee for about 7 years, and for the last 7 years, we've always had a handful or more judges approach us for one position. To limit it to only 3, there's something wrong there. There's a red flag that comes up. To have a selection committee that is chosen, that 5 members are chosen by one political person, that's political right there. We, as my colleagues and I, do not have the position of choosing one person to sit on the selection committee representing our district. So I think there's a flaw in the process. And my job is to make sure that we're not just doing the same old thing over and over and over, that we open the opportunities for the best individual for this position. This is a crucial position. My colleagues and I and the mayor have 2 positions that we actually are authorized to approve. That's the city manager, where we actually hire a headhunter, and that person brings qualified candidates to us, and we eliminate those individuals and the judges. So I take my job very serious. And when you only bring 3, the minimum, to this body, there's something wrong with that. I believe we have the premier court system in the country where we have people that come in from all parts of this country to look at our best practices. And this, to me, is not a best practice of only sending 3, the minimum, to this subcommittee. So I'm asking, and I like to make a motion at this time to ask the JSAB to forward all 5 qualified, if they're qualified candidates, to the subcommittee or to the full council. And I think it's only right to have the best of the best and a full pool to choose from, not to limit it to 3 individuals. And let me tell you, those 3 individuals that I've read their resumes are great individuals, have been individuals that have volunteered in our community, that have volunteered in our court systems, have sat on the bench, and have been a part of this city courts and building it and making it what it is today and making it the premier court system. So saying that, I make that motion. I'm not sure if there's a second or not.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I won't be supporting the motion. I feel very strongly that we have a process. Perhaps we should have reviewed what the process was before we sent people forth to do the interviews and to recruit for this. But nevertheless, that didn't happen. I just feel very strongly that to mess with this at this point in time, we are degrading the integrity of a process that has served this city well for many years. When you look back, Judge Song Ong was a terrific justice, chief judge, and I think that we relied on him then, we should rely on him now and let the process go. It could be determined at a later date if the recommended candidates are not meeting our expectations or qualifications that the full council expects.
I have a question. Has this body ever suggested forward more names up to this body from the JSAB in the past? When it comes to judges, are the presiding judge?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I understand that there has been a previous request many years ago, but I don't know of any others, just one.
Okay. Any other questions? With that, I'd like to make, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 3-1. We'll be asking the JSAB if they can forward the 3 names. The last question, just in case, I mean, all 5 names, I'm sorry. I have one other question, is that for some reason, are we allowed to have a joint e-session with the JSAB to actually figure out what those concerns are if the 5 aren't allowed to be forwarded to us? If it's about confidentiality of that individual, because I'd really like to figure out what their concerns are, those individuals, if they're not forwarded up, right?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, the materials and the comments of people in the community regarding the candidates must remain confidential with the JSAB. They are not at liberty to share those. They are an independent body and subject to the executive session requirements, are not free to do that. And that protects the commenters from having their comments repeated and to ensure full, frank discussion regarding the candidates. So I don't believe that a joint e-session would allow them to do that. I don't even know if we could convene a joint e-session. Honestly, I'd have to look into that.
Could you look into that? Because if we're the body that actually has the ultimate decision, I like to figure out what are the reasons why those individuals weren't forwarded up. So at least I can have, in my mind, a reason why. Thank you. With that, any future agenda items? No. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.